We are going to get started with this very, very exciting track, and we have some heavy hitters kicking things off for us. So you should all know that you're in the traditional media, what's old is new breakout track. I love it. I'm David Berkowitz, the founder of the Serial Marketer Consultancy, and I'm excited for this whole track. It's like a couple of years ago, I got into doing an email newsletter and started a Slack community that's like these bulletin board services I was doing in the 80s. It's funny how like these things just don't go away, and we're going to hear a lot of fantastic ideas over the course of the next couple hours, and definitely over the course of the next 20 minutes. So I don't want to take too much of your time. I personally want to hear from Philip Engelbrecht of Thetari and Matt Gehring of Rothy. So why don't you guys come on up and teach us a few things.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for hanging out and joining us here. So I'm Matt Gehring. I run the growth team at Rothy's. Essentially what that entails is all of our user acquisition, our website, data analytics, consumer insights, and then retention. Spent probably the last 20 years now pretty much exclusively in the online consumer space. And Philippe and I are going to kind of spend the next 20 minutes chatting through sort of how we've taken, or really how TV's evolved to enable more digital best practices around measurement, things like that. So what Rothy's is, what we're about, is really creating this sort of chic, comfortable, endlessly wearable shoe made out of recycled plastic water bottles. They're a variety of styles that kind of enable that woman on the go to look put together from the boardroom to the soccer field. We have 4 different silhouettes for women from $125 to $165, and now 2 styles for kids at $55 and $65. Our seamless 3D knitting process allows the shoes to be comfortable and wearable right out of the box, no break-in period. They're machine washable, which allows them to last through hundreds and hundreds of wears. So in 2012, our founders got together and they wanted to create a versatile, stylish, sort of front-of-closet shoe. They also wanted to do that, eliminating the massive amount of waste that happens within the fashion industry. It took them 4 years to develop both a sustainable product as well as supply chain before launching in 2016. So sustainability for us isn't just about add-on marketing. It's core to who we are, and we think about it in 4 ways. 1, our process. So we 3D knit our shoes to shape, which eliminates the waste, which is typically around over 30%. It's thrown away. For us, it's under 2.5%. The next part is the durability. Being machine washable and built to last, it provides a lot longer life of a shoe. Next, our supply chain. We own our own production, own our own supply chain, and that allows us to run inventories in a lot smaller level and actually eliminate any waste that typically comes from that cycle. And lastly, our materials and packaging. Our shoes come in the box they ship in, so no box in box, and that same shoe, if a woman needs to return or exchange it, can be reutilized. Adhesives are non-toxic and vegan. So we've also replaced a lot of water bottles. So now I think it's actually 35 million today. Water bottles have been reimagined as Rothy's. What's that equated to us for sales is last year we crossed about 140 million in revenue in our 3rd year, about 350% growth, and we'll double again this year. So as we started looking and talking to our customers, they're really happy with the product. They're sharing with each other. They're talking about washability. They're talking about sustainability. We knew we had a great product, something that we were really proud to produce, and the women who had them were loving them. The problem was the majority of the base, our target customer, did no clue who we were. And so, given my past experience in TV, we started looking at like ways that we could reach this mass audience, and that's kind of what brought us to working with Dattari.
Yeah, hi, everybody. My name is Philippe, and I'm the CEO of Dattari. For those of you who don't know us yet, we're a data and analytics company applied to the measurement and buying of television advertising. So obviously, in today's world, that's both streaming and linear inventory. We work with a lot of digitally vertical native brands, or kind of, let me broadly call it, the direct-to-consumer space. The IAB published a list of what they saw as the 250 most disruptive direct-to consumer brands just a few months ago. And in that list of 250, of those who run TV campaigns, actually half of them, almost half of them, work with Thetari. So you can see some of the names on the screen there. So we know the space really well. And if there's one thing I can tell you is that the D2C brands are all in on TV advertising. Don't take my word for it. The Video Advertising Bureau recently published and stated that D2C brands collectively invested close to $4 billion on TV alone last year. That was a 60% increase on the prior year. Possibly more impressive, it's tenfold over it was just 5 years ago. So when I look at this, I kind of like come to two observations. One, clearly TV advertising is no longer a big budget brand privilege. And two, not only did all of these companies like Rothy's find the courage to plunge into TV, they have also found great success, great outcomes. And if you were to ask me why, I would give you an answer in a simple, single sentence. It's because they all approach TV advertising as if it were a digital campaign, with the same types of data, with similar approaches and statistical methodologies, even with the exact same expectations that they took from digital, especially as it relates to the accuracy, the timeliness, the transparency in their campaigns. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, how to approach your old-fashioned TV campaign with a touch of modern digital technology. We're going to do that through the lens of Rothy's. Before we dive in, Matt and I wanted to debunk a few old bad myths that are still surrounding TV advertising, and I'm going to hand it back to Matt.
So one of them is the expense, that TV is incredibly expensive. You have to invest a ton in the creative, a ton to get it out and within it, and it's just not the case anymore. Because of a lot of the advancements in tracking, analytics, measurement, you can actually invest for a really low amount. $50,000 to do both the creative and actually start trafficking it can happen. For us, just in our initial start, we took $100K. From that, 4 creatives. We ran across about 26 linear networks, added 3 streaming, saw a little over 50 million impressions, and exceeded all of our sort of efficiency goals.
Yeah, the other thing we often hear from people is that TV can't be measured unless you kind of look some very pushy, or you use some very pushy 1-800 number or a very complex vanity URL. So I can tell you right now, none of that is true. Companies like Rothy's, which use modern data sets, modern statistical methodologies, and actually understand their performance of the campaign and just great granularity with the ability to optimize. I actually want to give you a very kind of topical, if not timely example of that. Do you remember just a few weeks ago, James Holzhauer winning streak on Jeopardy? Well, what was interesting is that during that time, Nielsen failed to observe that viewership had crept up. Now at Dattari, we use data from about 33 million set-top boxes, and we saw that viewership had ballooned from about 9 million to over 14 million viewers per game airing. So which in turn created an implicit CPM discount of about 35%. So Rothy's was very quick to jump on that and arbitrage it. And I like this example a lot because when you say data and analytics in TV advertising, people instantly think about measurement. But this is just a wonderful example of how data and analytics is as important, if not more important, even as it relates to media buying. Now, obviously, you can look at all of this and then say like, well, yeah, that's all fine and dandy, but the way TV works and the delays that live on the reporting, you got to wait days, if not weeks, you may miss this opportunity. Well, again, that is not true. Look, for what it's worth, people who work with us at Thetari, they will get their measurement, their reporting on a next day basis. If I can proudly say so, it comes in a wonderful dashboard. It's all there right in front of you. And then you might say, good, I get it, but that will only work to the extent that you sell directly from your website. Again, not true. This works from retail, but I think actually maybe more interesting for this room is what about Amazon, right? And so I want to give you an example here of one of our other clients, Hickeys. Hickeys is a Brooklyn-based elastic shoelace replacement for your shoes, kids' shoes, and my kids love it a lot. And so what we noticed is that when we ran a commercial for Hickeys, people would go to Google and click from Google directly into the Amazon storefront. So they would bypass the hickeys.com website altogether. And so once we ingested all that Amazon sales data, we were actually able to understand that TV sales, 60% of it went directly to Amazon, never to Hickeys. And that brings us to the last myth surrounding TV targeting.
My turn. So it's really that thinking about TV for a long time, it was essentially no targeting, very broad audiences. You've got high-level viewership data, and that's kind of all you had to play with. But as more and more TV is delivered via IP and less so from, say, antenna, you can get into specific audiences. You can get into targeting almost down to a granular, like one-to-one level. There's other things you can add on, first and third-party data. You can pull in demographics, psychographic, behavioral data, look at purchase intent, and geo-tests. There's other things like that that really have enabled you to move more beyond this sort of rough swag that kind of was what TV was like for a long time. So I want to get in a little bit of like how we've utilized some testing methodologies and things that almost like we would typically apply to, say, Facebook or Instagram or YouTube, and apply those through our kind of initial test. So we launched two totally different concepts, Her Words and This But That. And beside it just being two straight concepts that were different, there's a number of other things you can kind of optimize and test around. So elements like the sequencing of scenes, what copy you utilize within it, different end cards like this here, what's the CTA at the end? There's ability to use voiceover or not voiceover, and then you can also look at your spot duration. So I'm going to show you really quick one of our 15-second ads that ran. We get sound? So as we kind of launched this and working with Dattari, we pitted these two against each other, and we were able to see over time this really clear separation for that spot that just ran, this but that. Now, while typically you might think, okay, great, I found a winner, let's throw away the other one. With a lot of the targeting that you have now, we could actually isolate where this other concept worked better at a network level, at a day part, and actually still utilize that and not have to know that half of our creative budget was thrown away because we couldn't do it. We could still find those isolated spots where it could win. The other part, kind of going back a little bit to the spot length, traditionally it was always seen that the longer the spot, the better. You would run 60 seconds, and then people started talking about 30s, and what really you need to think about is when we looked at 15 second versus 30, that 15-second spot costs half as much. So that enables you to get into more expensive networks programming that you might not typically be able to get into, and really all you have to do is make sure that you're getting half the response out of that. So for us, what we saw when we kind of compared these two is that 15-second spot not only was equal, it actually outperformed from both the response rate as well as from a conversion rate. The other thing is utilizing the 33 million set-top boxes that Philippe talked about, we could actually look at how did these spots respond with our target audience. So the first creative that won really resonated with this sort of older, higher income audience. That was possibly what drove the differentiation. At the same time, we were able to see the other concept really responded well with a younger, kind of lower income audience. And so with some additional sort of advanced analytics around that, we could use and take that information and figure out how do we actually alter future creative iterations to improve response for that audience. So the other big thing is thinking about scale. Obviously, we saw these initial results. They looked great, but if you can't grow that, it doesn't really matter. So thankfully, with the work with Thetari that we were doing and through some of this analysis, we were actually able to 3x our spend pretty quickly while maintaining our same performance metrics. And with that, you think about like the optimization for scale is important, but being able to optimize for performance as well was key. And some of the things that Philippe can talk about will kind of go through that.
Yeah, thanks, Matt. So yeah, scaling TV advertising is not trivial, right? Think it through. If you want to test $150,000 or $250,000 in-game NFL airing, that's hardly something which we can call a test anymore. And so at Thetari, we developed a slew of tactics or strategies that really allow us to probe and discern the potential outcome on these more expensive media buys. And so some of them are listed here, like a fractional test, a rotational buildup, a lookalike audience. So many of them, and we don't have the luxury to kind of dissect and explain each of them. So I'm just going to pick one which actually we use a lot for Rothys and which works really well. It's national local. So national local, essentially, we go and buy unsold local inventory and we wrap it up as a pseudo-national TV purchase. Now, obviously, at the time of purchase, you don't really know how many households you're going to reach or what your impression volume is going to be. But in return for that inconvenience, you can get a hefty discount on the price. So let's put some real numbers behind it. So rather than throwing $10,000 on a Bravo primetime airing, we purchased the national local equivalent for as little as $300, right? Now, when the $300 work, then obviously you can quickly see how we can buy kind of the true national cousin at $10,000 with a little bit more confidence. And if it doesn't work, well, the $300 is also your max loss. And so increasingly, we run these tactics. TV investment goes up. And when that happens, other effects of TV start kicking in very quickly.
Yeah. So not everything is perfectly measurable. We know that even in the digital space with attribution. And one of the things that comes up is this halo effect that happens with TV, and it is real. It does increase, that impact increases as you start to scale your spend. You start to see efficiencies in other campaigns, other channels, click-through rates improve, conversion potentially increases, that sort of time to purchase might collapse. One of the things you can look at, especially within TV or around awareness, is taking your direct traffic plus your, say, branded paid search and organic traffic to the homepage, kind of combine those and kind of see how that changes. We've also just done simple things like look at Google Trends and see how, as we launched TV here, we saw a pretty steep increase in how people were going after and kind of looking for us on Google.
Yeah, so, I mean, look, we talked a little bit about performance optimizations. We touched on scale optimizations, but to truly harvest the potential of TV advertising beyond that direct response, beyond that delayed response, but kind of into the halo effect, as Matt evidenced, it requires that TV buyers fundamentally change their strategy. In particular, advertisers need to commit to higher reach, more higher impact, those brand-like TV buys. And so these are kind of like shown here in these black bars, and we start layering these in. And those types of TV investments are so much more than buying impressions. Amongst many other things, they reach a more captive audience. They signal prestige, they signal quality, and in many cases, they also drive a higher memorability, possibly even an amplification in social media circles. And when you do that, eventually, you will see the business as a whole performing better. Most easily observed in an uptick in the sales conversion rates, which we just kind of built in green there. And to kind of move to that stage, we also take a different tack. We move into what we call reach and frequency analysis or optimizations, both in planning as well as measurement. But yet, here again, we're going to depart from the old-fashioned way of how TV advertising is done. We're going to take another page out of the digital playbook, and rather than relying on a survey of a small panel of 26,000 Nielsen households, we're actually going to use IP-level data across millions of devices, across millions of people. And we can draw the reach and frequency distributions, or the histograms as you see there, perfectly. And so in this particular case, when we started with Rothy, so we hit about 52 million households. And then as we build the campaign, we made sure, of course, that we reached more people, but also we kind of held that frequency optimization in check. We do this for both linear and streaming, which provides a good segue into streaming.
I think we're almost out of time, but we did get into streaming, and I think one of the other sort of misconceptions, and this is data from Hulu, where people think of streaming and they think of small device, they're on their mobile phone. Actually, what Hulu is seeing is 80% of their viewership was actually happening in the living room on a large format device. And so as we started getting into the streaming side, we didn't, I think, initially realize like how much is still there, how many brands, networks have built an app, the proliferation and adoption of smart TV technology, as well as the better usability of those programs have enabled people to really, basically every network out there has an app or has some way that they're streaming their content. One of the areas that we pulled into was Discovery. We were seeing success with them on the linear side. We pulled it in via streaming and actually saw a 20% improvement in our efficiencies. So which do you invest in? I think it's actually both. Streaming is easy to start. It's a good way to test. It can potentially have you reach a different audience. It does tend to skew younger, but linear, the impact is real. You can go big. You can actually see some of the same kind of CPA performance that you would see in your online digital campaigns, and it does help build kind of the brand awareness. So kind of in wrapping up, TV has evolved. If you looked at what we just present, a lot of the best practices and a lot of the techniques came out of the digital space. It's what I'm doing on Facebook and Instagram. It's what we're doing in display. You can treat TV more and more like digital. Make sure whoever agency, whoever you're working with understands that and can execute on that as well. And it goes all the way down to the creative that actually you do in terms of like the testing and optimizations we talked about. Second thing, it really scales. Once that initial performance is found, you can very quickly push into sort of millions of spend per month. And then lastly, don't forget to look at beyond just the initial TV numbers. Look at the halo effect. Realize that there are a lot of other synergies that your sort of expansion into TV can help with. So I think that is it for us. So thank you.